Hello everyone, welcome back to another brand new video, and today we're going to be covering the level editor path. But before that, we're going to show you what Visual Script is capable of. So I'm going to place my Visual Script right there, and I'm going to get straight into it. So we'll show you what I can do with Visual Script and the VS Path object, which is what's shown in the preview of that object. But its real name is editor path 2D, but it basically means the same thing, be it Visual Script Path or editor path 2D. Um, we don't have to be too technical. Like the object name, like when you click on edit, it'll say editor path 2D, but in the preview it says VS Path. They're both the same object. But we're going to show you how you can animate the player's movement using these paths along with Visual Script and tween objects. So you open up your Visual Script, you add a new tween object, you edit the dialog, you can change the target object group as well as the path ID. If there is no path with that ID, then it will show as null. Otherwise, it'll automatically detect it and set the starting and end of values to the start and end of the path. So all you do is create your path, you create curves, you adjust the curves, whatever you want. It's like very nice animation. You just make the path, you make it any spirals, curves, and the player will just follow through the entire path. And it's all managed very nicely in the level editor. So you're kind of doing a lot of, you're kind of basically just doing animations from your fingertips without having to get into the engine, right? Because I don't give you access to the Coder engine. You just have the ability to use this level editor to create basic things. And so that path controls things like whether if the player changes directions or whether the player's rotation changes. Um, but you have to open up the Visual Script, set the path ID to match that target path which you created, and then you can edit the path. As you can see, I'm going to add a few points, um, and I could add the points below the path. It doesn't have to be from where the path starts from. It could be right underneath where the Visual Script is, right? And that way, that's where the path is. But let's say I decide to move that path up and down. Now that path is going to move relatively to the Visual Script object. So if I click on another tween, we can make the player turn green right after this path finishes. And like, how does it happen right after the path? That's because, as you can see in the order, it's from left to right, top to bottom. So if we set another tween and we make the player green, that means it's going to go through and fall through the path and then turn green after. So we can set the ending value to this green color just by adjusting it using the interface. You can also set the amount of time and all the other options that exist for tween objects. And yeah, if we click play, you'll notice the player is just going to go straight across. The moment he's done, he's going to turn green, just in a split second like that. Or in a second, because that was 1 second long. But obviously, we don't want him to float on top of the ground. You might notice in-game there are some animations where the player just flies on top of the ground. But we might want to make him look more like he's walking through the ground. So what we can do is adjust it and make it a little bit below, a little bit down. And the reason being is because uh, that point, that line, it's based on the center of the player. So just imagine the player being at that point. We wouldn't put this all the way near the ground. We put it like halfway because it starts from the center. Maybe in the future I can add a preview, but it's not too bad to kind of just eyeball where that would be. So if we move the Visual Script path, you're going to see that the path moves relative to it. So the first point doesn't need to be where the path is. It's just that when you move the Visual Script path, the entire path moves um, relative to that. So from that offset. And yeah, you can click on close, um, and you can directly run and see that now our player seems to be walking through because we adjusted it to be down. So you're not using your keyboard. You can't. Your keyboard is disabled. The animation just happens on its own. So it's a very nice way to make the player seem like he's moving. Even flying in the sky, going in circles. Whatever the path is, the player will follow it, and you don't have to move your keys. It's actually disabled until the animation is done. Make him turn green, turn red, whatever color we want. Turn transparent as well. There's already a skin that has transparency, so if you were to make that transparent, it would be even more invisible. Um, and that's why it's called the invisible skin. So let's see this. As you can see now, it looks a lot more wacky when we change the transition type. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You can play around with this. This is a very basic animation you can do. And that's the power of the level editor.